Oh boy, here we go again. It's time for two more of Scott M. Sullivan's really foolish quick tips where he thinks he has any clue how to argue with an atheist. It makes me wonder if he's ever actually met a real live atheist or if he spends all of his time hiding in his religious ivory tower, quaking in fear that someone just might blow his ridiculous religious beliefs out of the water. Clearly, he has no clue what he's talking about, as he once again proves as I delve into two more tips from the master of self-delusion.
Hey guys, Scott Sullivan here with tip number 5 now on how to argue with an atheist. Okay, so quick tip number 5 now on how to argue with an atheist is to watch out for the red herring fallacy. The red herring fallacy. This is the fallacy of changing the subject. A lot of times when you're in a discussion with an atheist on the existence of God, they'll tend to want to shift the discussion over to talking about the social benefits of atheism. I mean, after all, don't you know about the Crusades and all those wars of religion and the Islamic terrorists? Can't you see how bad religion is for society? They will say.
Wait a minute. He's reading his own playbook again. This isn't something that atheists do. This is something theists do constantly. When discussing the existence of God, they can never stay on topic because they really have nothing substantive to say. They have no objective evidence. They have no logical argument. And they just have wishful thinking and a blind desire for this imaginary friend in the sky to exist. Therefore, they simply have to assert that God is real, then give all kinds of reasons why it would be really, really nice for God to be real, none of which actually demonstrate that God is factually true. Where do we get morality? Where did everything come from? Look at the trees! A red herring is actually a real logical fallacy, but it isn't something I've seen coming from atheists. It's always a problem on the religious side.
But all this is irrelevant to the truth question. The subject is, does God exist or not? Not whether or not believing in God is good for society.
Indeed, that is the real question. But it's a question that no Christian apologist is able to directly address. If they could address it, if they had any evidence to present, if they had anything that they could say that made the existence of God logically or objectively demonstrable, the debate would be over. That we're still having the debate at all shows just how empty the religious claims actually are.
Now, I think belief in the right and true God is good for society, but that's beside the point. The point here is that this is a separate question from whether or not God exists in the first place. So watch out for this error. It will come up time and time again, I promise. Don't let the atheist change the subject.
See, that's the thing. We're not changing the subject. We're still waiting for apologists to actually demonstrate that their claims are factually true. I suspect we'll continue to wait for these claimed answers and evidences pretty much forever because apologists have no actual evidence. They have no actual answers. They just have a bunch of rhetoric based on blind faith for which they can only provide excuses and distractions because otherwise they got nothing at all. Yet you have some people like Sullivan who talk a good game, but who really can't put up any more than anyone else can. He claims he wants apologists to use logic, but logic simply doesn't work with his beliefs. He claims that atheists are using all these dishonest tactics while ignoring that it isn't the atheists. It's theists that are doing it. That's why Sullivan and apologists like him fail so miserably, and I'm sure why he refuses to allow anyone to comment on his videos. But hey, that's another one down. Let's check out quick tip number 6.
Okay guys, so quick tip number 6 now on how to argue with an atheist is to watch out for the straw man fallacy. That's the fallacy where one mischaracterizes the opponent's position in a way to make it sound silly or easy to knock down, and then pretend like they refuted the original position. And atheists do this all the time when they say things like, oh, you believe in God? Well, that's as silly as believing in Zeus or the flying spaghetti monster. But clearly the cases are disanalogous. There are no good reasons to think that Zeus or the flying spaghetti monster exist. In other words, these things are wholly unsupported.
Dude, God is wholly unsupported. The only reason that people bring up things like Zeus or the flying spaghetti monster is because they are entirely analogous to your imaginary friend in the sky. That's not a straw man. That's reality. Besides, what he's saying isn't even a straw man. It's no surprise he has no clue what he's actually talking about. A straw man fallacy is asserting that your opponent is saying something that is superficially similar but substantively different than what he's actually saying, so that you can refute this false argument and claim victory over the real one. Nowhere in what he said is he even remotely close to a straw man. At best here, he might make the case for a false analogy fallacy, where it's argued that since one thing has a particular property, something else must also have the same property. But what he's saying here is quite a stretch. In any case, he's got no clue which logical fallacy he's talking about. Quite interesting coming from someone who wants everyone to use logic.
On the other hand, there are very strong philosophical arguments for the existence of God. There are arguments like the first cause argument that shows that there is a one immaterial and personal cause of the universe. There's the design argument, the moral argument. There are strong philosophical arguments to show that God exists, but there are no good reasons to think that Zeus or the flying spaghetti monster exists. So the cases are just simply disanalogous, and this is evinced by the fact that these God questions are discussed at the highest levels of academia. I mean, you could pick up any professional philosophy journal and you will see these issues taken seriously. They'll be batting this issue back and forth, again, at the highest levels of academia. So the two instances are totally disanalogous.
There are plenty of philosophical arguments that are made for the existence of God. None of them are really any good at all. Sure, you do get people batting around these nonsense arguments at the highest levels, whatever that means, mostly by people who have strong religious beliefs and blind fanatical faith that it must be true. These arguments all fall apart under even the most basic of scrutiny, but the apologists and blindly faithful refuse to acknowledge their failure because they are supremely convinced that their beliefs just have to be true, even if they're not. The fact is, we could make the exact same arguments for both Zeus and the flying spaghetti monster because none of these philosophical arguments actually specify which deity they refer to. They're all extremely vague, only suggesting that there might be some God, maybe somewhere. They don't refer specifically to the Christian version of God. Therefore, you can fill in the blank with anything you want, and it makes just as much or little sense. Of course, none of these arguments are at all valid, so the claims are laughable at best.
This claim that, it's just like believing in the flying spaghetti monster, this is kind of a lowbrow, unsophisticated atheist sort of thing that I don't think even a professional atheist philosopher would take seriously. So watch out for this tactic. Don't fall for it. It is, in fact, a straw man fallacy.
But it's not. Yeah, I know he doesn't know any better, and even if he did, he wouldn't care. It's not lowbrow at all. It's pointing out the basic weakness of the Christian's belief in God. You cannot simply go from any of these poor philosophical arguments which give you, at best, a vague, there might be something out there conclusion to the specific Christian belief in God, without skipping across a logical tightrope backwards with your eyes closed. There is no logical means to get from here to there. You can make the exact same argument to get to any god, even something as ridiculous and completely made up like the flying spaghetti monster. There's absolutely no evidence that shows that any of these entities exist. Period. That's why all these supposed quick tips are so absurd. He's just spouting religious rhetoric, and none of it makes even the slightest bit of sense. 2 more down, but we're not done yet. There's still more of Sullivan's ridiculous quick tips to go. Let's be honest, I don't think this guy has ever even talked to an atheist, much less successfully argued with one. Or maybe he's out searching for the stupidest, most irrational atheist he can find, shooting for the low bar because his religion is unable to leap over any more than that. In any case, it's just pathetic. Thanks for listening. Do that stuff that you do where you do it. You know what I mean. I'll be back with more refutations and explanations soon, so please stay tuned.